Matt and I are about to cut the grass and weed eat and do all that for the first time this season. We've let it really grow up. It's looking pretty raggedy around here. But before we do that, I'm going to real quick go around and I've got me a quart jar and I'm going to gather a quart of dandelion blooms because I want to make jelly from them. It's a really tasty jelly, kind of a mild flavor, but unique in its own, and it's very easy to make, and I'll show you how to make it after I do this first step. So in just a few short minutes, I was able to get my quart full of dandelions. You can see I think you can see very good. My fingers are a little yellow, but other than that, it didn't take very long at all. So now I'm ready to go in and start the jelly. So I give my dandelions a quick rinse, is all I've done so far. You of course wouldn't want to use blooms that come from somewhere that you didn't know if it had been sprayed or not with a insecticide or pesticide or something like that. The ones in my yard might have been sprayed by a passing dog, but I know that nothing harmful has been on them. But I give them a rinse to get any like bugs or kind of debris off, and then now I've got a quart of water on the stove here, and I'm going to put them in that and bring it to a boil. And once the water boils, I'm going to let it boil for 3 minutes. So my blooms have been boiling for 3 minutes. Now I'm going to drain them out of the water, out of the liquid, and I'm going to discard them, and then I will show you what to do after that. So a lot of people, of course, are going to wonder, what does dandelion jelly taste like? And once it's completed, I'll talk more about that. But it has a real honey tone to me. So I noticed even as I'm inhaling the steam coming off the blooms here, that's what it reminds me of. It's kind of a sweet, musky, like a honey. That's what I get out of it. You'll have to, if you've had it before, you'll have to, of course, share what you think. So once I've finished draining out the blooms, I've ended up with about 4 cups of liquid, and I'm going to put that back in the pot now. So I'm using Sure Gel to make my jelly. So I've noticed in recent years some of the directions have changed. Now the one I'm using today still says to do it exactly like the ones that I've used in the past, which is to put all my Sure Gel into my liquid right there and stir it. I'm going to stir that in, and then we're going to let this mixture come up to a boil, and then we will add in our sugar. I've noticed in the last few years though, some packets of Sure Gel, this is a different brand, it's not actually Sure Gel, it's just pectin, but actually say now to take like it part of your sugar you put in at the beginning. So whatever your jelly directions are in the pectin that you're using to make jelly, that's what I would do. I would do it ever how it suggests, or how it says that you should, the directions. So now that we're at a full boil, I'm going to add the sugar. I have 4½ cups of sugar. I'm going to add it all at once. And then I'm going to stir it in. Then we're going to let this come back up to a boil, and we're going to boil it for 1 minute. Okay, it's been boiling for 1 minute. I'm going to turn off the heat. Scoot it over here to the side where I can start ladling it in my hot jars. You can kind of see that scum on top there. If that bothers you, you can definitely get rid of it. Skim it off and discard it, or eat it, or whatever it is that you want to do with it. But it doesn't bother me, so I just leave it. Now I do my jelly like that. It's called the open kettle method of canning. It's how I grew up doing it, and how I've done it for the last 25 years. So I have my jars hot. I have my lids hot, and then once the jelly begins to cool off, it seals in there. And if you don't feel comfortable doing that and you would rather water bath it, then you would just fill it up with like a 1/4 inch headspace and put it in your hot water bath canner for about 5 minutes. I wish you could smell this. It does smell so much like honey. You can also add like a teaspoon of butter, and sometimes that helps with the foaming if it, like I said, if it bothers you. So you can see how much jelly that recipe made. When it comes to making jelly, I've made it for so long, or pickles or anything that I do. I have plenty of jars. I'm very fortunate and blessed to have plenty. So I just go get jars and I fill them. I don't think about, well, that's going to make 6 pints or 6 quarts or whatever it is. I just go and get them. So I love these. This is my favorite size jelly jars. But as you can see, I have even the little tiny ones. Woo, those are hot. So once they're all sealed like that, I will cover them with a towel, and then I will check them tomorrow to make sure they sealed. You'll be able to tell, just like if you were pressing on top of a a can of soup or something that you bought at the store, how it feels firm. There should be no give there in that little tap. There should be no give. So that's how you can tell. If one of them didn't seal, I will just put it in the refrigerator, and then we'll eat it. We'll eat it first. The ones that do seal, I will put with my other canning things, and I always like to write the date on it, because I'm terrible to not remember when I made something. Now you may not be like that, so I like to write the date, and if it's something that's not obvious, I like to write what it is too. So then if I'm not here and someone else is mad, or someone's like, well, I know that's jelly, but what kind is it? I don't really like apple, or I really want apple, wonder if that's apple, and then they open it and it's not, it's dandelion. So I like to write on them. And then once they are cooled and you know they've sealed, you can take your rings off and then reuse them on the next thing that you can. You don't have to leave them on. Now some people do. Granny always left hers on, so that's kind of personal preference. But it is pretty cool that you can take the ring part off and then reuse it. Even if I was going to make pickles tomorrow or something like that, I could use that same ring tomorrow again. So now I have a little bit left in my pot, and I'm going to get it out in a little bowl, and then I'm going to taste it. But I'll go ahead and cover these up. Okay, here's my little bowl full that we'll eat first, that I didn't put in a jar. I don't know if you can see. Hopefully you can, but it looks like honey too. It don't just taste like it or smell like it. It actually looks like it. It's that clear kind of yellowy amber color. I've just got a piece of bread, what we call light bread. I know it's not great for you, but when I have a sandwich, that's what I want, is a piece of light bread. So I'm gonna make me a little foldy, we call them folded jelly sandwich here. Take a bite. Very good. I need me a glass of milk. It tastes so much like honey. It tastes a lot like honey. It's very good. It's very rewarding to be able to go out into your yard, and whether you planted it, I think of that, it's very rewarding when you plant it and harvest it. You know, you tend it and then you harvest it and then you put it in a jar. But it seems like I'm cheating somehow by using dandelions, or I make violet jelly or things like that. The wild grapes, black walnuts, when nature just gives them, you know, you just go out there and they're free and you just pick them up. But I think this year, because of all the things, we're all worrying about food more and thinking about being more self-sufficient. And this is just a wonderful way to do that. If you live near a park or something, maybe you could get dandelions there. Of course, you'd have to check and make sure that they've not been sprayed with anything. Maybe a neighbor who doesn't mow their yard very often, maybe they would let you get their dandelions too, and then you could share some of the jelly. I think of jelly, I've always thought of it as just something that you eat on a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or with breakfast, you know, with biscuits, so good like that. But my mother-in-law, Miss Cindy, taught me to think of it in a different way. And especially with these times that we're all living in, where you're thinking twice about your food. I'm glad that she taught me this. So she thinks of jelly, because she doesn't eat much sugar, and so she thinks of sugar as a sweetener. So she might not have any sugar in her house, but she has a jar of my jelly. So if she's going to make a salad dressing or something like that, she'll just use a little bit of that jelly in place of if you used brown sugar or something like that. She taught me to make a homemade bread recipe. I have a video about that, so I'll link to it, where the actual bread recipe, I make it in the bread machine, but you could also just make it, let it rise and do it the typical way, but it uses jelly instead of sugar. I love that one, because sometimes the last little bit in the jelly jar in the refrigerator that just don't seem like once it gets down a certain level, nobody wants to eat it, that's perfect for putting in that bread recipe. But after she kind of showed me that over the years, of course she's been my mother-in-law for a long time, I began to think about how in the old days people, especially in Appalachia and in other places, not just here, but I can only speak to Appalachia, they didn't have sugar often, but they had molasses, what some people call molasses, we just call syrup, sorghum syrup, and they had honey. And those were their sweeteners, you know, that's what they used. They didn't have sugar, but they used that syrup or honey to make cookies, to make cakes, to sweeten whatever it was that they wanted, that little bit of sweetness, they used that. So if you think about it, we can use jelly in that same way too. There's lots of folks that use jelly to as a syrup. They thin it down and they put it over ice cream or maybe over pound cake or something like that. So there's lots of different ways to use jelly other than just on biscuits or your favorite peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I hope you enjoyed seeing how to make dandelion jelly. If you've ever made it, please leave a comment and let me know. Do you think it tastes like honey like I do? And as always, I just hope you'll continue to drop back by often and help me celebrate Appalachia.